I found the photographs on a Tuesday. Not hidden in some drawer or locked away like secrets usually are. They were just sitting there on his laptop, open and waiting, as if the universe itself wanted me to see them. My hands shook so badly I had to set down my coffee, watching the dark liquid slosh against white ceramic while my entire world collapsed into a single folder labeled Vancouver Project 2019. That was 4 years ago. 4 years since I discovered that my best friend of 15 years and my wife of 7 had been documenting their affair with the kind of casual intimacy that only comes from absolute certainty you'll never be caught. My name is David Reeves, and I'm a telecommunications network architect. I design the invisible infrastructure that keeps millions of people connected: fiber optic pathways, bandwidth optimization, redundancy protocols. I build systems that never fail, networks that route around damage automatically, backup solutions that activate before anyone even notices something's wrong. I never imagined I'd need to architect the collapse of 2 lives the same way, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand what I became, you need to understand what I was. You need to know about Julian. Part 1. The Foundation. Julian Ashford and I met in college, both of us engineering students at McGill University in Montreal. It was September 2004, and we'd been randomly assigned as roommates in the aging brick residence hall that smelled perpetually of coffee and desperation. I was from Toronto, awkward and intense, the kind of student who color-coded his notes and finished problem sets 3 days early. Julian was from Vancouver, effortlessly charismatic in that way that made professors and students alike gravitate toward him. We should have been opposites who tolerated each other. Instead, we became inseparable. "You're going to burn out before midterms," Julian said one night, maybe 3 weeks into first semester. It was past midnight, and I was still hunched over my thermodynamics textbook. He was lying on his bed, tossing a tennis ball at the ceiling and catching it with machine-like regularity. "I'm fine," I muttered, not looking up. "Dave!" The tennis ball stopped. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" I couldn't remember. Julian sighed, rolled off his bed with theatrical effort, and grabbed his jacket. "Come on, there's a poutine place that's open late. My treat." I really should. Should what? Memorize the entire textbook? It's thermodynamics, not brain surgery. The test isn't for 2 weeks. He was already holding the door open, grinning. "Besides, you're buying next time. I'm establishing a debt system." That poutine run became a ritual. Every few nights, usually when I was drowning in work, Julian would forcibly extract me from whatever academic spiral I was in and drag me into the real world. We'd walk through Montreal streets, past the mountain and through neighborhoods that smelled like fresh bread and cigarettes, talking about everything except school. He told me about growing up in Vancouver, about parents who were never quite satisfied with anything he did. His father was a corporate lawyer who'd wanted Julian to follow in his footsteps. His mother was a symphony violinist who'd hoped for a musical prodigy. Instead, they got a son who was brilliant at engineering, but seemed to approach life with an almost aggressive casualness. "I think I'm wasting my potential," Julian said one night, his breath fogging in the October cold. "Like if I'm not stressed and miserable, I must not be trying hard enough." "Are you trying hard enough?" I asked. He laughed. "Oh, I'm getting better grades than you, aren't I?" He was. That was the infuriating part. Julian would skip half the lectures, study the night before exams, and still pull off A's with the kind of ease that made me question every hour I'd spent hunched over textbooks. But he never made me feel inferior about it. Instead, he'd help me understand concepts I was struggling with, explaining complex theories while we walked, using metaphors involving sports or food or whatever random thing caught his attention. You think too linearly, he'd say. You're trying to memorize the formula when you should be understanding why the formula exists. Here, imagine the molecules are people at a concert. By second year, we'd moved into an off-campus apartment together. It was a cramped two-bedroom in the plateau with slanted floors and a radiator that clanked like it was trying to communicate in Morse code. We furnished it with whatever we could afford. IKEA furniture, assembled incorrectly, a couch we found on the street that was surprisingly comfortable, posters we'd meant to frame but never did. Those were good years. Julian dated a series of smart, interesting women who all seemed to find his laid-back approach charming for about 3 months. Before moving on, I was awkward with dating, the kind of guy who could design a telecommunications network but couldn't figure out how to ask someone to coffee. Your problem, Julian said one night after I'd failed spectacularly at talking to a woman at a bar, is that you approach dating like it's engineering. You're trying to optimize for the perfect opening line when you should just be talking. Easy for you to say. It is easy. Watch. He turned to a group of women nearby and just started chatting. No pickup lines, no strategy, just genuine, relaxed conversation. Within 5 minutes, he had them laughing. Within 10, he'd exchanged numbers with one of them. I wanted to be annoyed, but Julian never made it feel like showing off. Later that night, walking home, he said, "You know what your actual problem is. You don't think you're interesting, but you are. You just need to let people see it." He spent the next few weeks coaching me, forcing me into social situations, refusing to let me hide behind my textbooks, and somehow, impossibly, it worked. I started dating. Nothing serious, but enough to realize Julian was right. I'd been so focused on optimization, I'd forgotten about connection. We graduated in 2008, right into the teeth of the financial crisis. The job market was brutal. Engineering graduates were competing for positions that paid barely more than retail. But Julian and I had made a pact. We were moving to Toronto together, finding work, building careers. "We're a team," Julian said the day we loaded up the U-Haul with everything we owned. Best friends, future business partners, possibly the two idiots who try to start a company and fail spectacularly. But whatever happens, we do it together. We found an apartment in Liberty Village, a neighborhood that was trying desperately to rebrand itself from industrial wasteland to hip urban center. The apartment was actually worse than our Montreal place, smaller, more expensive, with a view of a parking lot. But we were in Toronto, we were starting our careers, and we had each other. I landed a position at a mid-sized telecom company doing network infrastructure design. The pay was decent, the work was interesting, and I threw myself into it with the same intensity I'd brought to school. Julian took a job at a tech startup that was building some kind of social media analytics platform. He was their lead systems engineer, which sounded impressive, until you realized the entire company was 7 people working out of a converted warehouse. "It's going to be huge," Julian would say, with the kind of optimism that made you want to believe him even when you knew better. "We're building something revolutionary." The startup failed within 2 years. Not spectacularly, it just quietly ran out of money and dissolved. But by then, Julian had enough experience to land a position at the same company I was working for. Having him there transformed my work experience. We'd collaborate on projects, debate technical solutions over lunch, stay late working through complex problems. More importantly, we'd built a life. We had a circle of friends, other engineers, some of Julian's ex-girlfriends who'd stayed friendly, people from our apartment building. We'd host dinner parties in our cramped apartment, terrible meals we'd attempt to cook while increasingly drunk. We'd play pick-up hockey in the winter, go hiking in the summer, take trips to Montreal to visit our old haunts. Remember when you thought poutine was disgusting? Julian said during one of those trips, probably around 2011. We were at the same late-night place we'd frequented in college. I never said it was disgusting. You absolutely did. You said, and I quote, "Why would anyone ruin perfectly good fries with cheese and gravy?" I was young and stupid. And now you're old and stupid, but at least you have good taste in food. He raised his poutine fork in a mock toast. To growth. Was Julian who convinced me to ask out Sarah. I'd noticed her around the office. She worked in marketing, a few floors down from engineering. She was beautiful in an understated way, auburn hair usually pulled back, hazel eyes that seemed to actually focus when she talked to you, a laugh that sounded genuine rather than polite. But I'd never worked up the courage to do more than exchange pleasantries in the elevator. "You've been staring at her for 6 months, Julian said one day in early 2012. We were grabbing coffee in the building's cafe and Sarah was in line ahead of us. Just ask her out. It's not that simple. It literally is. Hey, Sarah, would you like to get coffee sometime? 6 words. Even you can manage 6 words. What if she says no? Then she says no and you move on, but she's not going to say no. I've seen how she looks at you. She doesn't. Dave. Julian put his hand on my shoulder. Trust me, just ask. So I did. My hands were shaking and I probably sounded like an idiot, but I asked Sarah if she'd like to get coffee sometime. Not in the office cafe, but somewhere real. She smiled, this genuine, warm smile that made my chest tight, and said yes. Julian was insufferable about it. See, was that so hard? You just needed someone to push you off the cliff. Terrible metaphor, but accurate. Sarah and I started dating. She was brilliant and funny and patient with my awkwardness. She'd studied communications at Western and had strong opinions about everything from political messaging to the best pizza in Toronto. She challenged me in ways I hadn't expected, pushing me out of my comfort zone, making me explain my work in terms that normal humans could understand. You can't just say bandwidth optimization, she'd say. Pretend you're explaining it to your grandmother. My grandmother understands bandwidth optimization. She was a telephone operator. Fine, explain it to me like I'm a humanities major who thinks engineering is just math with extra steps. Those conversations made me better at my job. I started thinking about not just how systems worked, but why they mattered. Sarah had this way of connecting technical concepts to human outcomes that I'd never considered. Julian loved her immediately. The 3 of us would hang out constantly, dinners, movies, weekend trips. Sarah fit perfectly into our dynamic, bringing her own energy while never making me feel like I was losing my best friend. She's perfect for you, Julian said one night after Sarah had gone home. We were cleaning up after dinner, loading our mismatched dishes into the ancient dishwasher. Like, almost suspiciously perfect? Are you sure she's real? Pretty sure. Because if this is some elaborate prank, I'm going to be very upset. I've already started planning my best man speech. I threw a dish towel at him. We've been dating for 4 months. So, I know quality when I see it, don't screw this up, I proposed. To Sarah in 2014, 2 years after we'd started dating. I'd planned this elaborate thing involving a trip to Montreal, revisiting places that were meaningful to me and Julian, trying to show her the history of who I was. But in the end, I proposed in our apartment, sitting on that terrible couch we'd found on the street years ago, because that's where we'd spent most of our time together, and it felt honest. She said yes before I'd finished asking. Julian was the best man at our wedding in 2015. He gave a speech that was funny and touching and perfectly calibrated to embarrass me without being cruel. He talked about the scared, awkward kid he'd met in college and the confident, capable man I'd become. Dave's always been brilliant, Julian said, raising his glass. But brilliance without connection is just noise. Sarah, you've helped him become not just a better engineer, but a better human. And Dave, you've shown me what it means to build something real, to commit. You two are the blueprint for the rest of us. People cried. I cried. Sarah cried. It was perfect. After the wedding, Sarah moved into the apartment Julian and I had been sharing. Julian found a new place about 20 minutes away, a condo in King West that he was ridiculously proud of. We still saw each other constantly, work, weekend hangouts, dinner parties that rotated between our places. When Sarah got pregnant in 2017, Julian was one of the first people we told. He showed up at our door an hour later with champagne for him and me, and sparkling cider for Sarah, and a children's book about a kid who wanted to be an engineer. Starting the indoctrination early, he said, grinning. Our daughter, Emma, was born in January 2018. She had Sarah's eyes and what appeared to be my inability to sleep on a normal schedule. Those first few months were brutal, the kind of exhausted delirium where everything blurs together and you're not sure if you've slept or just hallucinated sleeping. Julian was there constantly, bringing food, helping with late-night diaper changes, giving Sarah and me breaks when we were on the edge of collapse. He was Uncle Julian, and Emma loved him with the kind of pure, uncomplicated affection that babies have. You're a natural, Sarah said one night, watching Julian hold Emma while she slept. You should have kids of your own. Maybe someday, Julian said. Right now, I'm content being the fun uncle who gets to spoil her and then hand her back when things get messy. That was Julian. Always present, always helpful, but somehow never quite committing to anything permanent. He dated, but never seriously. He'd advanced steadily at work, but never seemed driven by ambition the way I was. He was content. I should have seen it. Looking back, I should have noticed the way his eyes lingered on Sarah sometimes, the way he always found reasons to come over, the way he'd volunteer to help when I was traveling for work, staying late to keep Sarah company. But I didn't see it, because Julian was my best friend, because I trusted him completely, because the idea that he could betray me was as impossible as the idea that I could betray myself. That trust was the foundation I'd built my entire adult life on. And like any foundation, once it cracked, everything above it came crashing down. Part 2. The Discovery. The Vancouver project folder wasn't supposed to be on Julian's laptop. I wasn't snooping, I need to make that clear, both to you and to myself. I'd gone over to Julian's condo to help him with a network configuration issue he'd been struggling with. He'd left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he went to answer a phone call in his bedroom. I glanced at the screen, just checking if he'd left any work files open that might give me context for the problem. And there it was. A folder with a name that made no sense. We'd never worked on any project in Vancouver. Our company had no clients there. Curiosity is a strange thing. It doesn't feel like a choice in the moment. It feels like gravity, pulling you towards something you simultaneously want and don't want to see. I told myself I was just confused, that I'd click on the folder and find some client work, maybe a side project Julian hadn't mentioned. The first photo loaded Sarah, my wife, in Julian's bed. The bed I'd helped him move into this condo. She was laughing at something off camera, wearing one of Julian's t-shirts and nothing else, her hair messy in that specific way it got after sex. My hand moved to the keyboard without conscious thought. Arrow key, next photo, Sarah and Julian together this time. His arm around her, both of them smiling at the camera, like tourists documenting a vacation, except the vacation was my marriage and they were having the time of their lives. Arrow key, another photo, another. They'd been documenting it, not just sleeping together, but chronicling their affair like it was something precious. Photos from what looked like a hotel room, photos from Julian's condo, photos from what I slowly, horribly recognized as our apartment, taken on days when I'd been traveling for work. There were dozens of them, maybe more. I stopped counting after the first 20, my brain unable to process the scale of the betrayal. The metadata was time-stamped. I clicked on the properties of the first few photos, hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. July 2019. A year and a half ago. I stood there in Julian's kitchen staring at his laptop screen while something fundamental inside me shattered. Not broke. Breaking is too clean, too simple. This was a shattering, like dropping a glass on concrete, pieces flying everywhere, impossible to put back together. "Dave," Julian's voice from the hallway. "Sorry about that, my mum always calls at the worst times. Should we look at that configuration?" He stopped. I watched his face change as he realized what I was looking at. The easy smile disappeared. Color drained from his face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Dave, How long?" My voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from underwater. "Let me explain." "How long?" I'd never yelled at Julian before. In 15 years of friendship we'd disagreed, sure, but never fought, never raised our voices. The sound of my rage in his pristine kitchen felt wrong, like swearing in a church. Julian's hands came up in a placating gesture. "A year and a half, but Dave, you need to understand." "I need to understand?" I laughed, and it came out broken. "I need to understand why my best friend has been fucking my wife. It's not like that." "What's it like then? Explain it to me. Use one of your metaphors. Make it make sense." He stepped toward me. I stepped back, hitting the kitchen counter, my hands gripping the edge so hard my knuckles went white. "Dave, please, just listen." "I'm listening." "Tell me why there are 50 photos of my wife in your bed. Tell me why you're smiling in them like this is the happiest you've ever been. Tell me." My voice cracked. "Tell me why my best friend would do this to me." "Because I love her." The words hung in the air between us. Simple, honest, devastating. "You love her?" I repeated flatly. "Yes." "And Sarah, does she love you?" Julian's silence was answer enough. I grabbed his laptop, yanked it off the counter. "I'm taking this." "Dave, don't." "Don't what? Don't show my wife the evidence that her affair is documented like a fucking vacation album? Don't gather proof before I divorce her?" "Please." Julian's voice broke. "Can we just talk about this? We're done talking. We're done everything. If I see you again, if you come near me or my daughter..." "Emma is..." "Don't you say her name." I was shaking with rage now, barely able to see straight. "Don't you ever say her name. You're not her uncle. You're nothing." I left. Walked out of Julian's condo, his laptop under my arm, while my best friend stood in his kitchen looking like I'd shot him. The drive home was a blur. I remember stopping at a red light and realizing I couldn't remember the last 3 turns. I remember a car honking behind me when the light turned green. I remember pulling into our apartment building's garage and just sitting there in the car, engine off, staring at Julian's laptop. I should have gone upstairs, confronted Sarah immediately, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I went through the entire folder, every photo, every document. There were text files too, some kind of diary they'd been keeping. I read entries from both of them, this sickening chronicle of their affair. Sarah's entries were full of guilt and longing. "She loved me," she wrote. "She didn't want to hurt me." But Julian understood her in ways I didn't. he listened differently. He saw her as more than just Dave's wife, Emma's mother. With Julian, she felt like herself again. Julian's entries were worse. He talked about fighting his feelings, trying to distance himself. But he'd loved Sarah from the beginning, he wrote. He'd stepped back, let me have her, because I'd asked first, and he was a good friend. But watching us together for years had been torture. When Sarah had finally confessed she had feelings for him too, he couldn't resist any more. I know this makes me a terrible person. One entry read, I know I'm betraying my best friend, but I can't give her up. She's everything. I sat in my car reading this until the parking garage's fluorescent lights hurt my eyes. It was past midnight when I finally went upstairs. Sarah was asleep on the couch, Emma's baby monitor on the coffee table beside her. She'd waited up for me and dozed off. She looked peaceful, beautiful. Like the woman I'd married, not the stranger who'd been documenting her affair in secret. I stood there watching her sleep, holding Julian's laptop, and realized had a choice to make. I could wake her up right now, show her the photos, scream and cry, and burn everything down immediately. The marriage would end tonight, in this room, with Emma sleeping in the next room, and our entire life together dissolving into accusations and tears. Or I could wait, plan, think strategically. I'm an architect. I design systems with redundancy, with fail-safes, with recovery protocols. I don't just react to problems, I engineer solutions. I looked at Sarah sleeping on our couch and made a decision that would define the next 4 years of my life. I would become the architect of their destruction. Part 3. The architecture of revenge. The first thing I did was secure the evidence. I copied everything from Julian's laptop onto an encrypted external drive, backed it up to a cloud service he couldn't access, and made physical copies that I stored in a safety deposit box at a bank across town. Then I wiped my tracks from his laptop and put it back in his condo the next day, making up some excuse about needing to run tests from my home network. Julian believed me. Of course he did. I was his best friend. The second thing I did was nothing, no confrontation, no accusations. I went to work, came home, played with Emma, had dinner with Sarah, and acted like everything was normal because I needed information before I could act, and information meant observation. I watched them. Not obviously, I'm not a private investigator, and I didn't have the resources for elaborate surveillance. But I'm a network architect. I understand data flow, communication patterns, vulnerabilities in systems. I installed monitoring software on our home computer, the one Sarah used for personal emails. Nothing illegal. Technically, it was my computer too. I set up logging on our home network to track when devices connected and what services they accessed. I checked Sarah's phone usage patterns against our cell plan. The picture emerged slowly. They were careful. Sarah would message Julian through a separate email account I wasn't supposed to know about. They'd meet when I was traveling for work, which had become more frequent as I'd taken on larger projects. Julian would come over to help with Emma while they did God knows what after my daughter was asleep. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, timestamps, pattern analyses. I built a database of their affair the way I'd build a network diagram. Every connection, every data point, every vulnerability. And I kept pretending. "You okay?" Sarah asked one night, maybe a week after my discovery. We were doing dishes together, this domestic ritual we'd had for years. "You seem distant." "Just work stress," I said, forcing a smile. "Big project with impossible deadlines." "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really. How was your day?" She launched into a story about something funny Emma had done. I nodded in the right places, laughed when appropriate, and mentally noted that she'd received 3 texts from Julian's number that afternoon while I was at the office. The psychological strain was immense. Every kiss felt like poison. Every "I love you" felt like a lie. And not just from her, but from me too, because I was lying just as much now. Every time Julian called to make plans, I'd agree enthusiastically, while mentally adding another entry to my evidence file. I lost weight, stopped sleeping properly, would lie awake next to Sarah at 3 in the morning, watching her breathe, wondering how long she'd been betraying me, wondering if Emma was even mine. That thought sent me into a panic spiral that lasted days. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't eat, just kept imagining that the daughter I loved might not be genetically mine, that Julian had taken everything. I bought a paternity test kit, swabbed Emma's mouth while she giggled, thinking it was a game, swabbed my own mouth, sent it to the lab with expedited processing. The wait was torture. But the result came back positive. Emma was mine. That small relief felt like the only solid ground in a world that had become entirely quicksand. 2 months after my discovery, I'd compiled enough evidence for a devastating divorce. Photos, emails, message logs, financial records showing Julian's spending on hotel rooms and gifts. I had a timeline spanning over a year and a half. I had everything I needed to destroy Sarah in court, take full custody of Emma, and ensure she'd be financially ruined. But I didn't file, because destroying Sarah wasn't enough. Julian needed to suffer too, and divorce proceedings, messy as they'd be, would give him and Sarah their relationship. They'd be together. They'd console each other through the difficulty I'd caused. In their minds, they'd be star-crossed lovers who'd finally overcome the obstacle between them. I needed something bigger, something that would destroy not just their relationship, but their ability to trust anyone, including each other. I needed to architect their mutual destruction. Part 4. Building the infrastructure. The plan took months to develop. I'd work on it late at night after Sarah was asleep, sitting in our home office with spreadsheets and diagrams that looked like innocent work documents. I mapped out scenarios, probability matrices, decision trees. I engineered their downfall the way I'd engineer a telecommunications network, with redundancy, with fail-safes, with checkpoints where I could adjust the strategy based on their responses. The foundation of my plan was simple: make them paranoid, make them doubt each other, make them believe their affair was being discovered slowly, leaked by someone they couldn't identify. Phase 1 began in January 2020, about 3 months after my discovery. I started with anonymous messages, not to Sarah or Julian. That would have caused an immediate crisis that would expose me. Instead, I sent messages to people adjacent to their affair. Julian's co-worker, who'd covered for him during suspicious absences. Sarah's friend, who'd clearly known something was going on. The messages were vague. I know what Julian's been doing. Does his best friend know? Sent from a burner email account routed through VPNs untraceable. Julian's co-worker, a guy named Thomas, who I'd met at a few company events, apparently freaked out and called Julian immediately. I know this because I'd positioned myself near Thomas's desk under the guise of checking some network equipment. I heard one side of the conversation. "I don't know, man, it was anonymous. What do they know? Should I tell Dave?" The paranoia started immediately. Julian called me that night, casual sounding but clearly stressed. "Hey, did Thomas mention anything weird to you today?" "Like what?" "Just, never mind, work stuff. Want to grab drinks this weekend." "Can't. Sarah's sister is visiting." Sarah's sister wasn't visiting. I just needed distance, needed them to feel like I was pulling away naturally while their anxiety ramped up. Over the next few weeks, I sent more messages. Always vague, always suggestive, never specific enough to prove anything. To Sarah's best friend, Jennifer. Ask Sarah about Vancouver. To another of Julian's co-workers, the condo in King West sees a lot of married visitors. I monitored their responses through their digital footprints. Sarah's search history showed queries about anonymous messages and how to trace emails. Julian's showed affair discovered and what to do if caught cheating, and they started being more careful, meeting less frequently, using encrypted messaging apps, which was fine. I wasn't trying to catch them anymore. I was trying to make them destroy themselves. Phase 2 started in March 2020, right as COVID hit and everything locked down. The pandemic was terrible for most people, but for my purposes, it was perfect. Everyone was isolated, stressed, paranoid. Relationships were strained. The line between rational thought and anxiety spirals got very thin. I worked from home. Sarah worked from home. Emma's daycare closed. We were together constantly, which meant Sarah couldn't see Julian. I watched her stress levels increase, saw her checking her phone compulsively, noticed her being short-tempered in ways she'd never been before. "Are you okay?" I asked one night, playing the concerned husband perfectly. "You seem really stressed." "It's just everything," she said. "Work, Emma, being cooped up. I feel like I can't breathe." "Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist. Video sessions are covered by insurance." She did start therapy. I know because I saw the calendar appointments on our shared schedule. And I know she talked about her affair because I'd carefully selected a therapist who was bound by confidentiality, but whose practice used an online portal with security vulnerabilities I could exploit. I know I crossed ethical lines there, legal lines too, probably. But I'd already crossed so many that a few more didn't matter. The therapy notes confirmed what I'd suspected. Sarah was racked with guilt. She loved Julian, but felt horrified by what they were doing. She wanted to end it, but didn't know how. The anonymous messages had made her paranoid that someone knew, that their affair would be exposed, that she'd lose Emma. Julian was having his own breakdown. He'd started drinking more. I could see it in his video calls during work meetings, could hear it in his voice when he'd call me to chat. Our friendship felt strained to him, and he didn't know if it was because of the pandemic isolation or because I somehow knew. "Do you ever feel like everything's falling apart?" he asked me during one call, drunk enough that his words slurred slightly. "Every day," I said honestly. "But we'll get through it." "Will we, though? What if we don't? What if everything we've built just collapses? Then we rebuild. That's what we do, right? We're engineers. We fix things." He laughed bitterly. "Some things can't be fixed, Dave. Is everything okay with you?" Yeah, I'm fine. Just the isolation getting to me." I let silence hang on the line, let him marinate in his guilt and fear. Phase 3 started in fall 2020, as things began opening up again. I'd been promoted at work, a senior network architect position that came with significant autonomy and a team under me. Part of my new role involved strategic planning for the company's infrastructure expansion, and part of that expansion, I suggested, should include a Vancouver office. I built the business case carefully. Vancouver was a growing tech hub. Real estate was cheaper than Toronto. We could attract talent from the West Coast. The time zone differences would give us extended coverage hours. My bosses loved it. They approved the project, gave me budget and authority, and told me to build the team. I put Julian in charge of the Vancouver office setup. "Really?" he asked when I told him. We were finally meeting in person again, careful social distancing at an outdoor patio. You want me to move to Vancouver? Not permanently, just oversee the office setup, hire the initial team, establish the infrastructure. 6 months, maybe a year. It's a huge opportunity, Julian. Leadership experience, your own team, real autonomy. I don't know. That's a long time away from Toronto. Away from what? You're not dating anyone seriously. Your family's in Vancouver. You'd be closer to them. And it's not like we won't stay in touch. Plus, the project needs someone I trust completely. That word, trust, landed like I'd intended. I saw him flinch slightly. Let me think about it, he said. He thought about it for 2 weeks. I knew he was agonizing over it because Sarah's stress levels went through the roof. She was snapping at me constantly, crying randomly, clearly panicking about Julian leaving. Finally, Julian accepted. He'd moved to Vancouver in January 2021. Temporary, he said, just until the office was established. Sarah was devastated. I pretended not to notice. Julian's moving to Vancouver, I told her casually one night. What? Why? Work. I put him in charge of opening our new office there. It's a great opportunity for him. Did you talk to him about this? Did you ask if he wanted to move? Of course I talked to him. He's excited about it. Why? Is something wrong? No, He's your best friend. Won't you miss him? Of course, but it's temporary, and it's what's best for his career. I watched her process this, saw the calculations behind her eyes. She couldn't object without revealing why Julian's location mattered so much to her. When does he leave? She asked quietly. 3 weeks. She locked herself in our bedroom and cried. I heard her through the door but didn't interrupt. Just sat in the living room, holding Emma, and checked off another milestone in my plan. Part 5. The separation. Julian moved to Vancouver on January 15, 2021. I helped him pack up his condo, played the supportive best friend, even drove him to the airport. Thank you, he said, before going through security. For believing in me, for this opportunity. That's what best friends do, I said, and hugged him. I felt him shake slightly in my arms. Guilt, probably. Or maybe fear about leaving Sarah. I didn't care which. With Julian in Vancouver, Sarah spiraled. She tried to hide it, but I saw everything. The constant phone checks, the mood swings, the way she'd zone out during conversations. She was texting Julian constantly on that secret email account based on her data usage patterns. I let this continue for 2 months, let her anxiety build, let her miss him desperately, let her feel the full weight of the separation I'd engineered. Then in March, I started Phase 4, the discovery simulation. I came home from work one day and asked Sarah to sit down. My expression was serious, troubled. What's wrong? She asked immediately, alarm in her voice. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Her face went pale. Okay. Are you having an affair? The question hung between us. I watched her carefully, every micro-expression, every shift in body language. This was the moment everything could break, the moment my plan could fail if I'd miscalculated. What? No, why would you ask that? Because you've been acting strange for months, distant, secretive, always on your phone, and someone at work mentioned seeing you with another man. I was lying, of course. No one had mentioned anything, but Sarah didn't know that. Who said that? Does it matter? Is it true? No, Dave, I swear to you, I'm not having an affair. I've been stressed because of the pandemic, because you're working constantly, because Julian moved away and I... She stopped herself. You what? Nothing, I just miss having him around. He's our friend, Emma's uncle. It's been hard not having that support system. I let my expression soften slightly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have accused you without evidence. I've just been paranoid lately. Work stress, I guess. It's okay, she said, relief flooding her face. I understand. But I saw the fear in her eyes. Someone had seen something. Someone suspected. The anonymous messages from months ago had evolved into direct accusations from her husband. She immediately contacted Julian. I watched the data packets flow through our home network, saw her send an email from her secret account. The subject line unencrypted in the metadata. He asked me. Julian called me the next day. Casual sounding, but I could hear the tension. Hey, how are things with you and Sarah? You guys doing okay? Why do you ask? Just, you mentioned work stress when we talked last week. Wanted to make sure everything's good at home. Everything's fine. Why would you be worried about my marriage, Julian? Silence on the line, long enough to be uncomfortable. No reason, just checking in. That's what best friends do, right? Right, I said. That's what best friends do. I started asking Sarah questions, never accusatory, always confused. Did you tell Jennifer about Julian moving? She seemed weirdly upset about it when I ran into her. I found a receipt for a hotel in our credit card statement from last year. Were you planning a surprise trip? Each question was carefully calibrated to increase paranoia without triggering a full confession. I needed them anxious, not cornered. Sarah started therapy again. I encouraged it, told her it was good she was dealing with her stress. Meanwhile, I monitored the sessions through that vulnerable portal, watching her unpack her guilt and fear to a therapist who had no idea I was reading along. I think my husband suspects, she told her therapist. He's asking questions, looking at things differently, and Julian's in Vancouver, and I can't just end things over the phone, and I don't know what to do. In May 2021, I suggested to Sarah that we should visit Julian in Vancouver. A family trip, I said. Emma should see her uncle. We could all use a change of scenery. Sarah's face when I suggested this was almost worth the entire year of planning. Pure terror, quickly masked as surprise. Vancouver? Now? Why not? We're vaccinated. Things are opening up. And you said you miss Julian? It would be good for Emma to see him. That's a big trip with a toddler. We've done longer drives. Come on, it'll be fun. We haven't had a real vacation in over a year. She couldn't refuse without a good reason, so she agreed. We flew to Vancouver in June. Julian picked us up from the airport, and I watched him and Sarah carefully avoid eye contact, watched them maintain exactly the right amount of casual distance. We stayed in a hotel downtown. Julian showed us around the city, took us to restaurants, played with Emma. He was the perfect host, the perfect uncle, the perfect friend. And every moment he and Sarah were both dying inside, desperate to be alone together but unable to find a single moment away from my observation. On our last night there, I suggested Sarah and I go for a walk after putting Emma to bed. The hotel had a babysitting service. Just us, I said, like we used to do before Emma, remember? We walked along the waterfront, past Cole Harbour towards Stanley Park. It was beautiful. Sunset over the water, mountains in the distance, a perfect romantic setting. Sarah, I said, stopping to look out at the ocean, I need to tell you something. I felt her tense beside me. I know I've been difficult lately, distracted with work, stressed about everything, and I know that's been hard on you. Dave, let me finish. I want to be a better husband, a better father, and I want us to work on our marriage, really work on it, 'cause you're everything to me. You and Emma, you're my entire world. She started crying. Not tears of relief or happiness. tears of guilt so profound it was destroying her from the inside. "I love you too," she said, and I knew she meant it. That was the horrible part. She loved me and Julian both, and she was trapped between us, and I'd engineered every aspect of her torture. We flew back to Toronto. Sarah was quieter than usual, withdrawn. I pretended not to notice. A week later, I found a reason to fire Julian. Part 6. The Demolition. Julian hadn't actually done anything wrong at work. The Vancouver office was being set up on schedule and under budget. But I'm a senior architect with significant authority, and I'd been documenting small errors in his work for months, trivial things that individually meant nothing but collectively could paint a picture of incompetence if presented correctly. I built a case against him the way I'd built the telecommunications networks he was supposedly mismanaging. Every flaw highlighted, every delayed decision catalogued, every minor oversight magnified. In July 2021, I recommended to leadership that Julian be removed from the Vancouver project. The transition to remote work had revealed limitations in his management style, I argued. We needed someone with more strategic vision, someone who understood the bigger picture. I suggested myself for the role. Leadership agreed. They authorized me to deliver the news to Julian personally, given our friendship. A courtesy, they called it. I scheduled a video call with Julian on a Friday afternoon. I timed it specifically, end of his week, when he'd have the entire weekend to spiral. "Hey," Julian said when he answered. He looked tired. Vancouver was good for his career, but hard on his mental health, I'd noted from his social media activity. Lots of late-night posts, signs of stress and isolation. "Julian, I need to talk to you about the Vancouver project." His expression shifted. "Immediately." "Okay." "Leadership has decided to make some changes. They're concerned about the timeline and some of the decisions that have been made." "What decisions? Everything's on track." "There have been issues. The vendor selection process took too long. The budget allocation for networking equipment was inefficient. The hiring timeline has slipped." "Those were all approved delays. I documented everything." "I know you did, but leadership wants someone with more experience in this type of rollout. They've asked me to take over directly." Silence. I watched him process this, saw the realization dawn. "You're firing me." "Not firing, transitioning you back to Toronto. You'll return to your previous role." "My previous role?" His voice was flat. "The one I had before you convinced me to move across the country." "Julian! Did you plan this?" His eyes were sharp now, cutting through the video connection. "Did you send me to Vancouver knowing you'd yank it away?" "Of course not. This is a business decision." "Bullshit! You wanted me out of Toronto, away from—" He stopped himself. "Away from what?" He didn't answer, just stared at me through the screen with an expression I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not fear, understanding. "You know," he said quietly. I didn't respond, just held his gaze. "How long have you known?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Dave, please, just tell me, how long?" The temptation to confess, to scream at him, to unleash everything I'd been holding in for 2 years was almost overwhelming. But I couldn't. Not yet. The demolition wasn't complete. "Your transition back to Toronto begins next month," I said. "HR will send the details. I'm sorry, Julian." I ended the call. Julian called Sarah immediately. I know because I was monitoring her phone, and I watched the call come through while I was sitting in our living room, pretending to work. Sarah took the phone into our bedroom, closed the door. I gave her privacy, or the illusion of it, since I'd installed monitoring software on her device months ago. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see the duration. 43 minutes. and I saw her face when she emerged, devastated. "Julian's coming back to Toronto," she said. "I know I had to deliver the news. It's unfortunate, but it's the right call for the company." "You fired your best friend." "I didn't fire him. I reassigned him. There's a difference." "Is there?" She was looking at me differently now, not with guilt or fear, but with something closer to recognition. "This is all very convenient for you, isn't it? Julian moves away. Julian comes back, all according to your decisions." "It's work, Sarah. I don't make these choices based on personal feelings." "Don't you?" We stared at each other. This was the closest we'd come to the truth in 2 years. "What are you asking me?" I said quietly. "I'm asking if my husband is cruel." "I'm asking if my wife is faithful." The words hung between us, sharp and dangerous. Sarah's face went pale. "I've never been unfaithful to you," she said. "Then we have nothing to worry about." Julian moved back to Toronto in August 2021. He found a new apartment, smaller and sadder than his old condo. I'd made sure his financial situation was tight. The Vancouver assignment hadn't come with a salary increase, and the cost of living there had burned through his savings. Now back in Toronto, with a diminished role, he was struggling. I didn't help. Would have in the past, obviously. But now I just watched him struggle, the way I'd struggled emotionally for 2 years. Sarah wanted to see him. I could tell from her agitation, her constant phone checking, but I'd made it socially impossible. We were working through some things, I told our friends, having some marriage difficulties. This served 2 purposes. It explained why Sarah seemed stressed, and it made any contact between her and Julian look even more suspicious if discovered. Julian tried to reach out to me several times, calls, texts, emails. I responded minimally, busy with work, dealing with family stuff. We'll catch up soon. But we never did. By October, both Sarah and Julian were isolated from their support systems. Sarah couldn't talk to her friends about the affair without exposing it. Julian couldn't talk to me, his best friend, because I was the person he'd betrayed. They had each other, but even that communication was strained, paranoid, guilt-ridden, monitored by me through their digital trails. That's when I started Phase 5, the revelation. Part 7, the revelation. I'd been gathering evidence for 2 years. Not just the original photos from Julian's laptop, but everything that had happened since. Text messages, emails, phone records, financial data. I documented their affair with the thoroughness of a forensic accountant and the technical precision of a network architect. I organized everything into a presentation, not informal, a formal, professional presentation with slides, timelines, statistical analysis. I treated their affair like a technical project I was analyzing, complete with graphs showing communication frequency over time, maps indicating meeting locations, and a financial breakdown of money spent on their relationship. It was clinical, cold, devastatingly comprehensive. On November 12th, 2021, 3 days before our wedding anniversary, I scheduled a meeting. I didn't tell them it was a meeting, of course. I told Sarah we were having dinner with Julian to clear the air and work on our friendship. I told Julian that Sarah and I wanted to talk through some issues and needed his perspective as someone who knew us both well. They both agreed, probably seeing it as an opportunity to feel less guilty or manage the situation somehow. I reserved a private dining room at a restaurant downtown, neutral territory, expensive enough to feel serious, private enough for what I had planned. Sarah arrived first. She'd dressed carefully, not too formal, not too casual. She was nervous. I could see it in the way she kept adjusting her necklace, a tell she'd had since we started dating. "Is this okay?" she asked. Sitting down with Julian? I know things have been weird between you two. It's necessary, I said. We need to address some things. Julian arrived 10 minutes later. He'd lost weight, I noticed, looked older. The move to Vancouver and back had aged him. Dave. Sarah? He nodded to us both, maintaining the same careful distance from Sarah that they'd perfected in Vancouver. Sit, I said. We ordered drinks, made small talk about the weather, about Emma, about work. Everything felt wrong, forced and artificial. We were three people pretending to be something we'd once been. After the drinks arrived, I pulled out my laptop. I want to show you both something, I said. Is this a work thing? Julian asked. Because I'm not sure dinner is the time. It's personal. I opened the presentation. The title slide appeared on my screen, visible to both of them. The Vancouver Project, a comprehensive analysis of betrayal, July 2019 to present. Sarah gasped. Julian went completely still. Dave, Sarah whispered, what is this? Exactly what it looks like. A documentation of your affair, every detail, every lie, every moment you thought I didn't know. I clicked to the next slide. The first photo, Sarah in Julian's bed, laughing. Dave, Julian started. Don't. You'll both get a chance to speak. Right now, you're going to listen. I went through the entire presentation, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. The original photos, the text messages, the hotel receipts, the timeline showing the affair started in July 2019 and continued through the present day. Despite my confrontation with Julian, over a year ago I showed them the therapy notes I'd accessed, Sarah's confessions to her therapist. I showed them the monitoring data from our home network, Julian's desperate texts asking her not to give up on them. I showed them financial analysis proving they'd spent over $15,000 on their affair, hotel rooms, restaurants, gifts. I showed them everything. Sarah was crying before I was halfway through, silent tears streaming down her face, mascara running, her entire body shaking. Julian just stared at the screen, expression unreadable. When I finished, I closed the laptop and looked at them both. 2 years? I said. I've known for 2 years. Since November 2019, when I found the photos on your laptop, Julian. Then why? Sarah's voice broke. Why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to understand. I wanted to see how far you'd go, how long you'd lie, whether either of you would develop a conscience and stop. We tried to stop, Julian said quietly. After those anonymous messages, after you moved me to Vancouver, we tried. You failed. Yes, we failed. I looked at Sarah. Do you love him? She didn't answer. Sarah, do you love Julian? Yes, she whispered. And you, Julian, do you love Sarah? Yes. More than you loved me, your best friend of 17 years? Julian flinched. It's not a competition, Dave, isn't it? You chose her over me. You chose this. I gestured at the laptop, at the evidence for 17 years of friendship. So yes, Julian, it absolutely is a competition, and I lost. You didn't lose. I lost my wife. I lost my best friend. I lost the only 2 people in my adult life that I trusted completely. So don't tell me I didn't lose. The silence that followed was suffocating. Other diners at the restaurant were probably eating, talking, living normal lives. But in our private room, the world had ended. What happens now? Sarah asked. Are you divorcing me? I don't know yet. What do you mean you don't know? I mean I've spent 2 years planning to destroy both of you. I've engineered scenarios, I've manipulated situations. I sent Julian to Vancouver specifically to separate you. I fired him to hurt him financially. I've documented everything to ensure I could win custody of Emma and leave you,
with nothing. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. Julian looked like I'd punched him. But now that I'm here, looking at you both, I realize something. I paused, feeling emotion crack through my carefully constructed facade for the first time in years. I realize that destroying you won't give me back what I lost. It won't give me back the friend I trusted or the marriage I believed in. It'll just mean I've spent 2 years becoming someone as terrible as you are. Dave! Julian reached across the table. I pulled away. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. What do you want from us? Sarah asked. Tell us what you want and we'll do it. I want the last 2 years back. I want to not know what I know. I want to believe again. My voice cracked.
But I can't have any of that, so instead, I want you both to understand exactly what you've destroyed. I stood up, gathered my laptop. I'm leaving. You two stay here, have dinner, talk about whatever you need to talk about. Tomorrow, Sarah, I want you to move out. Take whatever you need, but Emma stays with me. You can't. I can. I have 2 years of documented evidence of your affair and the psychological damage it caused me. I have your therapy notes confessing to the affair. I have financial records. Any family court will side with me. Dave, please, let's talk about this. Don't make decisions when you're angry. I'm not angry. I was angry 2 years ago. Now I'm just tired. I looked at Julian. You're fired, effective immediately. HR will contact you Monday morning. You already fired me once. That was a reassignment. This is termination. You violated workplace ethics by conducting an affair with a colleague's spouse. I have documentation of you using company
resources, your laptop, your office, for personal matters related to this affair. The company has zero tolerance policies. Julian's face went white. Dave, that's my career. I can't. You should have thought of that before you fucked my wife. I left them there. Walked out of the private dining room, through the restaurant, into the November cold. I got in my car and sat there, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I'd done it. The confrontation I'd planned for 2 years, the revelation of everything I knew, the destruction of their sense of safety and privacy. It should have felt satisfying, triumphant. Instead, it felt hollow, like I'd set fire to my own life just to watch them burn too. I drove home, paid the babysitter, and sat in Emma's room watching her sleep. She was 3 years old, innocent and perfect, and her world was about to fall apart because of decisions the adults around her had made. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. She didn't wake up. Just
kept sleeping, unaware that everything was about to change. Part 8. The Aftermath. Sarah came home at midnight. I was still in Emma's room, and I heard her come in, heard her crying in the living room. I didn't go to her, just stayed with Emma, holding on to the one pure thing left in my life. Eventually, Sarah knocked softly on Emma's door. Dave, can we talk? Tomorrow, pack your things tonight. I'll sleep in here. Please, just 5 minutes. There's nothing to talk about. There's everything to talk about. Our daughter, our marriage, 2 years of 2 years of you lying to me every day, every kiss, every I love you, all lies. They weren't all lies. I do love you. You loved him more. Silence. Then quietly. Not more. Differently. That's not better, Sarah. I know. I heard her walk away, heard her moving around our bedroom, pulling clothes from drawers. The sounds of a marriage ending, reduced to hangers, scraping in a closet, and suitcases being zipped. She left early the next morning. I pretended to be asleep when she came into Emma's room to kiss our daughter goodbye. Heard her whispering promises about seeing Emma soon, about this being temporary, about everything being okay. More lies, different context, same dishonesty. When I heard the front door close, I got up and looked around the apartment. Sarah had taken clothes, toiletries, some personal items, but the space felt fundamentally unchanged, which was almost worse. If she gutted the place, at least it would have matched how I felt inside. Emma woke up asking for Mommy. I told her Mommy had to go help Grandma for a few days. The lie came easily. I'd become good at lying over the past 2 years. We'd all become good at it. Julian called 17 times that day. I didn't answer. He texted, "Please, let's talk. I know you're angry, but we need to figure this out." "I'm sorry. I know that means nothing, but I'm sorry." "Dave, please, 17 years of friendship has to count for something." I responded to only one message, the last one. 17 years counted for everything. That's why this hurts so much. Don't contact me again. I blocked his number after that. Work was complicated. I'd made the threat about firing Julian, but actually executing it required HR involvement and potential legal complications. I met with our company's legal counsel Monday morning. "I need to report an ethics violation," I said. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, who I'd worked with on various compliance issues, took notes while I explained. Julian's affair with Sarah, the use of company property, the photos on his company laptop, the violation of the workplace relationship disclosure policy. "Ernest is your best friend," Patricia said when I finished. "Are you sure you want to proceed? Once we start an investigation, it becomes official record." "I'm sure." "And you're certain about the evidence?" I showed her a carefully edited version of what I'd compiled. "Enough to prove the violation, not enough to reveal the full extent of my surveillance or the questionable methods I'd used to gather some information." Patricia reviewed everything, her expression neutral. "This is sufficient for termination, but Dave, I need to ask, are you doing this for the right reasons?" "What are the right reasons?" "Company policy violations, professional ethics, not personal revenge." "Does it matter if the outcome is the same?" "Yes. It matters for liability purposes. If Julian can argue this is personal retaliation, he could have grounds for a wrongful termination suit." I'd anticipated this. "The violations are real. The evidence is documented. My personal feelings about Julian's behavior don't change the fact that he broke company policy." "All right, we'll proceed with termination. He'll be informed by end of day." Julian was officially fired that evening. I know because he called from an unknown number. I'd blocked his personal phone, but not numbers I didn't recognize. "Dave, please, you're destroying my life." "You destroyed mine first." I know I did, and I'm sorry. But this, getting me fired, taking Emma from Sarah, this is too far. Too far. You fucked my wife for 2 years, in my apartment, in your bed. You documented it like a vacation album. And I'm going too far? I never meant to hurt you. That's the worst part, Julian. You didn't care enough to even consider hurting me. I was just collateral damage in your love story. That's not... Goodbye, Julian. I hung up and blocked that number too. The divorce proceedings began in December. Sarah hired a lawyer. I had an entire legal team, not because I'd hired them, but because I'd spent 2 years preparing and had documentation they'd never seen in a custody case. The evidence I'd gathered was overwhelming. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue I'd violated privacy laws, but I'd been careful. Everything I'd obtained was from devices and accounts I had legal access to as a spouse. The monitoring software was on jointly owned equipment. The financial records were from joint accounts. Sarah's affair was indisputable. Her own therapy notes, properly subpoenaed through legal channels, though I'd known what was in them long before, confirmed the timeline and depth of the betrayal. Character witnesses testified that I'd been a devoted father and husband. In February 2022, I was awarded full custody of Emma. Sarah got visitation, weekends and holidays. but Emma would live primarily with me. The financial settlement was minimal. We'd split assets roughly evenly, but Sarah had to pay child support given the custody arrangement. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt numb. Emma started asking more questions about why Mommy didn't live with us anymore. I kept the answers simple, age-appropriate. Mommy and Daddy decided to live in different houses, but we both love you very much. Simple lies, the currency of broken families. Sarah would pick Emma up for her weekend visits, and we'd have these strained exchanges at the door. She'd ask how Emma had been. I'd give minimal updates. She'd try to engage me in conversation about co-parenting or therapy or rebuilding trust, and I'd shut her down. "We're not rebuilding anything," I said once. "We're managing custody, that's all." Emma deserves better than parents who hate each other. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you started sleeping with my best friend. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects with the same intensity I'd brought to planning my revenge. I was designing networks, managing teams, earning promotions. My professional life was flourishing even as my personal life was ashes. But the satisfaction that came from success felt hollow. Every achievement reminded me that Julian wasn't there to celebrate with me. Every difficult day reminded me that I couldn't call my best friend for advice. I destroyed them both. Sarah was working a lower-paying job, living in a small apartment, seeing her daughter on weekends. Julian had been blackballed in our industry. Word of his termination had spread, and no one wanted to hire someone fired for ethics violations. He'd moved back to Vancouver, working some kind of tech support job that was far beneath his capabilities. I monitored their lives from a distance, not obsessively anymore, but enough to know they weren't together. The affair had ended with my revelation. They'd tried to stay in contact for a few weeks after, but the guilt and trauma had destroyed whatever they'd had. They'd lost each other too. That should have made me happy. It didn't. Part 9, the reconstruction therapy, was Sarah's idea, ironically. She sent an email in June 2022, 8 months after the confrontation. "Dave, I know you hate me, I understand why, but Emma is starting to notice that we can't stand to be in the same room together. She asked me last week why I look sad when I drop her off at your place. I don't want her growing up thinking this is what relationships look like. Would you consider family therapy? Not to fix our marriage, I know that's over, but to learn how to co-parent without this much hostility." I ignored the email for 3 days. Then I looked at Emma, 4 years old now, brilliant and observant, and realized Sarah was right. Emma was noticing. Emma was internalizing our poison. I agreed to therapy. Our therapist was a woman named Dr. Amanda Keating, who specialized in high conflict divorces. She was in her 50s, with grey hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every variation of human dysfunction and was unimpressed by all of it. The first session was brutal. Dr. Keating had us sit across from each other and asked simple questions that felt like emotional surgery. "Sarah, why are we here?" "Because I had an affair and Dave can't forgive me, and our daughter is suffering because we can't communicate." "Dave, why are we here?" "Because Sarah thinks therapy can fix what she broke." "Can it?" "No." Dr. Keating nodded. "All right, let's establish some ground rules. First, we're not here to fix your marriage. That's not the goal. We're here to establish functional co-parenting. That means being able to communicate about Emma without hostility. Can you both commit to that?" We both agreed, though I didn't believe it was possible. The sessions continued weekly. Dr. Keating pushed us to communicate about Emma, school decisions, medical appointments, vacation schedules, without letting our personal history poison every interaction. It was hard. Everything felt like a negotiation weighted with subtext. But gradually, microscopically, it got easier. In August, Emma's kindergarten had a parent orientation. Sarah and I sat together, not by choice, but because Emma wanted both her parents there. We made small talk. We both asked appropriate questions. We didn't argue. Afterward, in the parking lot, Sarah said, "That was less terrible than I expected." "Don't make it a thing," I said. "I'm not. I'm just acknowledging that we got through an hour without wanting to kill each other. The bar is very low." "It is, but we cleared it." Small victories, that's what Dr. Keating called them. Each interaction that didn't end in hostility was progress, but I was still empty inside, still felt like I'd burned down my life even while technically winning every battle. In October 2022, almost 3 years after discovering the affair, I ran into Julian. It was completely accidental. I was grabbing coffee before a meeting downtown and he was in line ahead of me. I recognized him immediately, even though he'd changed, thinner, older, tired. He saw me and froze. "Dave." "Julian." We stood there in the coffee shop line, two former best friends who now existed on opposite sides of a chasm. "You look good," Julian said finally. "Professional, successful." "I am successful." "I heard you made VP. Congratulations." "What are you doing in Toronto? I thought you moved back to Vancouver." "I did. I'm just here for a job interview, trying to rebuild." "How's that going?" "Honestly, terribly. Turns out being fired for ethics violations makes employers nervous." He said it without bitterness, which somehow made it worse. "I'm sorry," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. "Are you? I destroyed your life. You destroyed mine back. Seems fair?" "It doesn't feel fair." "No, it doesn't." We got our coffees in silence. Julian turned to leave, then stopped. "Dave, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know I loved you. As a friend, as a brother. What I did to you was the worst thing I've ever done. And I think about it every day." "That doesn't change anything." "I know, but I needed to say it." He left. I stood there with my coffee, watching him disappear into Toronto's morning crowds, and felt something crack in my chest. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Julian's face, about 17 years of friendship, about the person I'd become in pursuit of revenge. I'd won. I'd destroyed both of them. I had full custody of Emma, a flourishing career, a carefully constructed life. And I was miserable. Dr. Keating noticed during our next session. "Something's changed," she said. "You're distracted." I ran into Julian. Sarah, sitting across from me, tensed. "How did that go?" Dr. Keating asked. He apologized. Said he thinks about what he did every day. And it doesn't change anything, but it made me realize something. I looked at Dr. Keating, then at Sarah. I destroyed him. Deliberately, methodically. I spent 2 years planning his destruction and I succeeded. And it didn't make me feel better. It made me feel like a monster. "You're not a monster," Sarah said quietly. "You were
Hurt. I was hurt, so I hurt back. Worse, more calculatedly. I didn't just react. I engineered their destruction. That's not justice. That's just cruelty." Dr. Keating leaned forward. "Dave, what you're experiencing is the realization that revenge doesn't heal trauma. It perpetuates it. You've spent 3 years living in that trauma, feeding it, letting it define you. The question now is, are you ready to let it go?" "I don't know how." "Neither do I," Sarah added. "But maybe that's something we figure out together. Not as husband and wife, just as two people trying to be better for our daughter." I looked at Sarah, really looked at her for the first time in years. She'd aged too. had the same tired expression I'd seen on Julian's face, the same weight of guilt and regret. "I don't forgive you," I said. "I know. I don't know if I ever will. I know that too. But I don't want to hate you anymore. I'm tired of hating you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm tired of being hated." Dr. Keating let the silence sit for a moment, then said, "That's a start." Part 10. The Resolution. The next year was about rebuilding. Not what we'd had, but something new and functional. Sarah and I learned to co-parent. Really co-parent. Not just tolerate each other during custody exchanges. We had weekly check-ins about Emma. We split holidays without arguments. We both attended Emma's kindergarten events and school conferences without the atmosphere feeling poisonous. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was peace. Or the beginnings of it. Emma flourished. She was bright and funny and had somehow emerged from the wreckage of her parents' marriage with her spirit intact. She loved both of us, and we both loved her, and that had to be enough. I started dating again in early 2023. Nothing serious, just casual relationships with women who had no connection to my past. It felt strange to be vulnerable again, to consider trusting someone. But I tried. Sarah
started dating too. She told me about it during one of our co-parenting check-ins, nervous about how I'd react. "I'm seeing someone," she said. "It's early, but it's going well. I wanted to tell you before Emma mentions it." "Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? I'm not going to police your relationship, Sarah. We're divorced." "I know, I wanted you to hear it from me. I appreciate that. Is he good to you?" She looked surprised by the question. "Yes, he is." "Then I'm glad you're happy." And I meant it. Not easily, not without a pang of something that might have been residual jealousy or loss. But I meant it. The letter from Julian came in April 2023, almost 4 years after I discovered the affair. It arrived at my office, forwarded through company mail. Julian must have known I'd blocked every other avenue of communication. The envelope was simple, hand-addressed, with no return address. I almost threw it away, held it over the trash can in my office for a full minute, debating. But I opened it. "Dave, I've written this letter 100 times in my head over the past 4 years. I still don't know if I'll send it. And if you're reading this, I guess I found the courage, or the stupidity. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I'm not delusional enough to think I'll get it. I'm writing because I need you to understand something, even if it changes nothing. You were right about everything. The affair was a betrayal that destroyed not just your marriage, but our friendship. Your revenge, and yes, I know it was revenge, deliberate and planned, was brutal. You systematically dismantled my life with the same precision you used to design networks. You're probably the only person I know who could have done it so effectively. I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my best friend, and eventually even Sarah, because you were right about that too, what? We couldn't survive being exposed. The guilt destroyed it. We tried to stay together for about 3 months after your revelation, but every time we looked at each other, all we saw was what we'd done to you. I moved back to Vancouver. Took a job that pays a quarter of what I was making before. I'm rebuilding, slowly. I have a therapist now. She's helped me understand why I did what I did. The way I've always avoided commitment, the pattern of wanting what I can't have, the fundamental selfishness that let me justify betraying you. None of that excuses it. Understanding why doesn't make it right. But here's what I need you to know. You were the best friend I ever had. The best friend I'll ever have. And losing you hurt more than anything else I lost. More than the job, more than Sarah, more than my reputation, because you were the person who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You were the person who pushed me to be better, even when I didn't want to. I destroyed that. I destroyed us, and I'm sorrier than I have words to express. I don't expect a response. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that whatever you think about me now, know that our friendship was real, that every moment before the affair was genuine, that I loved you as a brother and I always will, even if you can never love me again. I hope you're doing well. I hope Emma is thriving. I hope you've found peace. I'm sorry, Dave, for everything. Julian. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and sat at my desk, staring at nothing. 4 years. 4 years of anger and revenge and reconstruction. 4 years of living in the aftermath of betrayal. I thought about Julian's face in that coffee shop. About 17 years of friendship reduced to a conversation between strangers. About the fact that I had Emma and a successful career and a functional co-parenting relationship with Sarah, but I still felt empty. Revenge
hadn't filled that emptiness. Success hadn't either. I took out a piece of paper and started writing. Julian, I got your letter. I almost didn't read it, almost threw it away. But I'm glad I didn't. You're right that I engineered your destruction. Every part of it was planned. Sending you to Vancouver, firing you, documenting everything for maximum damage. I became someone I didn't recognize, someone who could calculate the most efficient way to ruin a person's life. That person scares me. You destroyed something irreplaceable when you slept with Sarah, but I destroyed something too when I spent 2 years plotting revenge. I destroyed the part of myself that believed in redemption, in forgiveness, in the possibility that people can be better than their worst moments. I'm trying to rebuild that part now. It's slow, harder than I expected. I can't forgive you. I don't know if I ever will. The trust we had is gone, and trust, real trust, doesn't regenerate once it's broken.
You can build something new, but you can't rebuild what existed before. But I can acknowledge that you were a good friend for 17 years before you became the worst thing that ever happened to me. I can acknowledge that I miss the person you were, even while knowing I can never have that relationship again. I can acknowledge that revenge didn't make me whole. It just made me cruel. Sarah and I are learning to co-parent. It's not forgiveness, but it's functional. Maybe that's what recovery looks like. Not fixing what's broken, but learning to build something new from the pieces. I don't know if we'll ever talk again. Probably not. This wound goes too deep. But I needed you to know that I received your letter and I read it and it mattered. I hope you're rebuilding. I hope you're learning to be better. I hope someday you find friendships you don't destroy. And despite everything, I hope you're okay. Dave. I mailed the letter that afternoon before I could change my mind. Julian never responded. I didn't expect him to. The letter wasn't about starting a dialogue. It was about ending one, closing a chapter that had defined too many years of my life. Epilogue. It's Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. Now, 6 years since I found those photos, 6 years of aftermath and reconstruction. Emma is 8. She's brilliant and kind and has Sarah's laugh and my analytical mind. She splits her time between my place and Sarah's, and she's happy, not damaged, not broken, just a kid with 2 parents who love her and had to learn to do it separately. Sarah and I are friends, not close friends, but we can sit together at Emma's school events and have conversations that aren't just about custody schedules. She's still with the guy she started dating, Michael, a teacher who's good with Emma and has no connection to our complicated past. They might get married soon. She asked my opinion about it. which felt surreal. If he makes you happy and he's good to Emma, then yes, I told her. That's it? No conditions? What conditions would I have? You're not mine to put conditions on anymore. I'm not yours, she agreed. But I'm grateful we can be in each other's lives, even like this. Me too. And I meant it. I made VP at 36, which is young in telecommunications. I have a team of talented engineers, complex projects, respect in the industry. I'm good at what I do, but I've learned not to let work consume me the way I did during those years of planning revenge. I date. Nothing serious yet. I'm not sure I'm capable of serious anymore. Trust doesn't come easily when you've seen how thoroughly people can betray it. But I'm trying. Taking it slow. Learning to be vulnerable again, even though vulnerability feels dangerous. I haven't seen Julian since that coffee shop encounter. I know from mutual acquaintances, we lost most of our shared friends in the fallout, that he's doing okay. He found steady work in Vancouver, is dating someone, is rebuilding his life piece by piece. Good. I want that for him. Not because I've forgiven him, but because I'm tired of wanting people to suffer. Sometimes, late at night when Emma's asleep and the apartment is quiet, I think about what my therapist asked me 2 years ago. Are you ready to let it go? I don't know if I'll ever completely let it go. The betrayal is part of my history now, part of the architecture of who I've become. But I'm learning to live with it rather than be consumed by it. The photographs are still in my safety deposit box. I haven't looked at them in years, but I can't bring myself to destroy them. They're evidence of something that happened, proof that I didn't imagine the whole thing. Maybe someday I'll be strong enough to delete them. Not today. What I learned, what took me 6 years of therapy and reconstruction to understand, is that revenge is a trap. It promises satisfaction but delivers only emptiness. You think destroying the people who hurt you will heal your wounds, but it just creates new ones. I destroyed Julian's career and reputation. I wounded Sarah in ways that will take her years to recover from. And in the process, I destroyed parts of myself. My capacity for trust, my belief in redemption, my ability to form close relationships without constant fear of betrayal. Was it worth it? I still don't know. There are days I think, yes, they deserved everything they got. There are days I think, no, I became a monster to punish monsters, and that's not justice. Most days I think it just is. It happened. I can't undo it. All I can do is try to be better going forward. Emma asked me once, during a bedtime story, "Dad, why don't you and Uncle Julian see each other anymore?" Uncle Julian? She barely remembered him, but the title had stuck from when she was a baby. Sometimes friendships end, I told her. Even ones you think will last forever. That's sad. It is. But you have other friends now, right? I do. Good. Everyone needs friends. She's right. Everyone needs friends. Everyone needs people they can trust. I'm working on building that again. Slowly, carefully, with better boundaries and clearer understanding of what trust actually means. The thing about betrayal is that it teaches you something fundamental. People are capable of hurting you in ways you never imagined. But the thing about recovery is that it teaches you something too. You're capable of surviving pain you thought would destroy you. Julian and Sarah hurt me. I hurt them back. We all survived. We're all rebuilding. And maybe that's not justice, and maybe that's not redemption, but maybe it's enough. I still have the Tuesday ritual, coffee early morning before the world fully wakes up. It's not poutine runs through Montreal with my best friend anymore. It's not planning my day with the wife I trusted. It's just me, coffee, and the quiet acceptance that this is my life now. Different, damaged, but mine. And somewhere in Vancouver, Julian probably has his own morning ritual, his own damaged life he's trying to rebuild. And somewhere across town, Sarah is waking up next to Michael, preparing for her day, being a mother to our daughter on her weekends. We're all moving forward, separately, scarred, but moving forward. That has to count for something. The photographs sit in that safety deposit box, untouched. The evidence of betrayal preserved like archaeological artifacts from a disaster. Maybe I'll destroy them someday. Maybe I'll keep them forever. Right now, I'm just focused on being a good father, a good boss, a decent person. The rest, the forgiveness, the healing, the complete closure, maybe that comes later. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you just learn to live with the scars and build something new around them. I'm still learning. I found the photographs on a Tuesday. That was 6 years ago. I'm still finding my way back from what I found. But I'm finding it. That's
Enough.